You say that once, in one of the richest towns Europe had ever known, 2 bells were cast entirely from silver. Not bronze, not iron, silver. And yet today, those bells no longer ring. Because something happened in Schwaz. Something that the townspeople never saw coming. Welcome to Of Mountains and Men, where we explore mysteries, myths, and legends from the Alps and beyond. Tonight, we explore how one of Tyrol's wealthiest towns rose from a quiet valley, and how its silver voice was finally lost. High above the town of Schwaz, on the alpine meadows near Kugelmoos, a young herding maid named Gertrud watched over her cattle as she did every day. The sun was already sinking behind the mountains when her herd's bull, usually calm and gentle, suddenly began to bellow. It struck the earth with its hoofs, tearing at the soil, tossing moss and stone into the air. Was ist denn los? Gertrud murmured. What's the matter with you? But the animal would not be calmed. Again and again, it drove its horns into the ground, until suddenly, beneath the torn earth, something shimmered. Gertrud knelt. She brushed away the soil. The stones beneath were strangely heavy. They gleamed with pale blue and silvery veins. That evening, she carried them down into the valley and brought them to a local smith. He turned one slowly in the firelight. Then his face changed. Gertrud, he whispered, you have found silver. News spread quickly, then faster, then uncontrollably. Within months, miners poured into the hills above Schwaz. Shafts were sunk, tunnels driven deep into the mountain. The sound of iron filled the valleys, picks striking stone, carts groaning through the darkness, winches turning day and night. What had been a quiet market town became one of the greatest mining centers Europe had ever known. They said the mountains bled silver. And with silver came splendor. New houses rose, churches expanded, walls were painted, altars gilded. Merchants arrived from Augsburg and beyond. Amongst them, agents of the Fugger family, financiers of the emperors. Silver from Schwaz would soon fund armies, crowns, and courts. And so, the people of Schwaz ordered something no town had ever dared to cast. 2 church bells, not from bronze, but from their own silver. When the bells were raised into the tower, the whole town gathered below. "They will ring for God's glory," the mayor proclaimed, "and for the prosperity of Schwaz. They will never fall silent." When they rang for the first time, people said the sound was unlike any other, brighter, clearer, almost alive. But prosperity has a way of changing its servants. The deeper the miners dug, the harsher the work became. The demands grew. So did the danger. Cave-ins, bad air, exhaustion. Lives were lost in the dark. "Dig deeper," the merchants urged. "Faster. The silver will not wait." And slowly, the veins began to thin. It was said the harder they drove the mountain, the less it gave in return. One winter night, a violent storm swept across the valley. Lightning broke over the hills. Wind howled through the streets like a warning. The next morning, the townspeople gathered below the church tower, and they stopped. No bell had called them to prayer. "The bells," someone whispered. "They did not ring." When they were examined, cracks were found along the rims. Perhaps lightning had struck them. Perhaps frost had weakened the metal. Or perhaps, as some murmured, the mountain had simply reclaimed its silver. "They will never ring again," the church warden said. And indeed, they never did. In the years that followed, attempts were made to repair both bells and mines alike. Neither returned to their former glory. The silver faded, the miners left. The town grew quiet. And above Schwaz, in a silent tower, the silver bells remained, present but voiceless. Even today, Schwaz still bears the marks of what it once was. In the late 15th and 16th centuries, this town became one of the most important silver mining centers in all of Europe. At its height, more than 10,000 miners worked beneath these mountains. The wealth drawn from Schwaz helped finance Emperor Maximilian I, whose court was based in Innsbruck, and whose ambitions stretched across a continent. Contemporary records describe silver so abundant that it transformed a small Tyrolean settlement into a global economic force. But history also records something else. The mines did not last. By the late 16th century, their richest veins were exhausted. Production declined. The boom ended. What remained were empty tunnels and the memory of a town that once rang with silver. The legend of silver bells echoes this reality. A community that rose faster than any before it. A wealth that seemed inexhaustible. And a silence that followed when the mountain could give no more. They say that if you walk through Schwaz at dawn, when the streets are empty and the mountains still hold the night, you can almost imagine what it once sounded like. Not just iron and stone, but silver in the air. And if the bells no longer ring, perhaps that is their final lesson. That even the richest voice will fall silent when it forgets to listen to the mountain that gave it life.